Well, greetings. Here's your Entrepreneur News Minute for today, October 30th, 2024. I'm Phil Greenwood from beautiful Madison, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, home of the Badgers, and the Wisconsin School of Business. What we want to talk about, or what I want to talk about today, is an article that showed up in Forbes online magazine over the past couple days. The article was written by Melinda Elmborg, and she talked about Founder's DNA. Are you wired for startup life? You can look at the link and click on it, or copy and paste it to go directly to the article. But she's basing the article on research done out of Australia on a good number of startups. It's kind of some interesting data. This has been a subject that's been talked about for 30, 40, 50 years. Is there something uniquely wired about entrepreneurs versus others? And at least in the study, it seems like they think there is. But I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on it at the end. The study was actually a paper in Nature.com, or Nature magazine, of course, very well known. And it was studied the impact of founder personalities on startup success. It was published in 2023. The authors, again out of Australia, looked at 21,180 global firms in the Crunchbase database, very similar to PitchBook. So immediately some questions are raised about the population. You're going to typically have venture-backed companies, things of that nature on Crunchbase, but we'll leave that for toward the end. Secondly, they defined success. They wanted to correlate the personalities of the entrepreneurs with success. And of course, success in startups and early stage firms is a very, very subjective thing. The way they defined it is that the firm was around for a while and it either acquired another business or was acquired by another firm, or it actually did an IPO. Now, lots of questions on that, but again, we'll get to it. But what they did is they sent surveys and had the 21,000 do a personality test using what we call the Big Five personality. The Big Five basically measures things like openness to experience, conscientiousness, the amount of extroversion or introversion, your degree of agreeableness, and your emotional stability or your neuroticism. I've seen it cited in other studies. And so they wanted to measure where the entrepreneurs, the founders, fell on these 5 general traits, and then compare them to the general population. Well, what they found is that the entrepreneurs, especially in comparison to the general population that they studied, is that they had a preference for variety, they liked novelty and starting new things, so they had an openness to adventure. They really liked being the center of attention, so modesty was not a big part of their life, and they tended to be exuberant, meaning high activity levels, high need for achievement. So things that you would assume entrepreneurs would possess as traits is what they found. Now, this stuff, as I mentioned, I remember studies going back to the 1970s on psychology and so on. Now they're getting into actually trying to study the DNA of entrepreneurs. But a couple questions with this study is, of course, how do you define success? You define success 1,000 different ways, and it can be a very personal thing, depending on if you're an investor, a founder, an employee, whatever. Secondly, these were early stage companies from the Crunchbase database. I've used Crunchbase, a great database, just like PitchBook and all the other ones, but it's a very limited number of companies in that database. Remember, just in the United States alone, there's over 30 million small businesses less than 500 employees, and typically you'll see anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million new businesses started every year. So you'd have to really look at that. But at least in the population they looked at, Crunchbase companies, venture-backed, they were able to come up with some pretty good data. Thirdly, context is a big deal with startups. There's so many other variables: the market, the product, the environment, the economy, everything, the state you locate in, the country you locate in. All these things can differ. So I would really have to. I wouldn't take a lot out of a study like this simply even for that question. And then finally, I know we talk about, anybody who's read Kahneman and Tversky, you talk about biases all the time. Well, mine here would be on survivor, not so much on survivor bias, but more so on why not study similar companies that didn't succeed according to their definition? Look at those entrepreneurs, their personality traits, and then kind of go from that to compare to the entrepreneurs, they're successful entrepreneurs, they're successful founders. So always lots of questions, probably some good data in something like this. I don't know if it's real applicable, and I'm not sure, are we going to see venture capitalists all of a sudden have all their founders that they may invest in take these tests? We'll see, but it's something to think about, and it gives somebody something to publish.